Welcome to the Reality After Show. I am Matt Bischoff from Survivor Caramoan and also from the band Moonbow. And also, I used to have a long beard. You know, I have a resume besides Survivor, but I'm here with Dan Montchal. Alex Trias is in Chicago, and Johnny Fairplay and King George are in Chicago for a VIP extraordinaire event that you got a free T-shirt, you got an autographed poster, you got free booze, you got free food. I mean, Chicago is not a cheap city, Dan. So I honestly feel that bang for your buck, if you were one of those people that went to Chicago tonight for Johnny's party, that it's probably the best party he's ever done from an intimate, cool standpoint.
Oh, from everyone that's there, I'm sure they had an awesome time. I'm sure they'll keep having an awesome time for a few more hours if you've been to some of his parties. But I just assumed that everyone else skipped out because it's you and me, Matt. We're the only two with winner picks that are still left in this game. Now, yours has no shot at winning, but she's still there.
She is, and I thought, we're talking about Venus, my winner pick. I thought, man, if she can survive tonight's vote, then I think that Venus has a good chance of going deep into the game. As we discussed right before we went on live here, that she has no chance of winning, but I think she could fly kind of just under the radar in comparison to like a Q or different people. And just, I don't know. I think Venus will just kind of be one of the people that goes to the end and gets no votes.
I am so excited for Venus the rest of this game simply because you saw it at the very end where Soto was like, was that you? And she took credit for it. And that's going to go to her head and she's going to think, I'm the one that organized this. And I can just see this arrogance and confidence coming out that I think it's going to be great TV because I think she's going to continue to douse herself in gasoline.
Yes.
But to some extent, I think that's only going to make sure that she goes further in the game because she's always going to be, we can get Venus out anytime in this game. This is, we need to make the strategic move and get rid of Q, get rid of, Hunter, Kenzie, Tiffany, whoever that may be. That I think her getting more arrogant is not only going to be great TV, but it's going to continue to propel her further in the game.
Oh, yeah. So who is your winner pick?
Kenzie.
Kenzie is your winner pick. Okay.
Now, Kenzie was my winner pick solely based on the fact that she's here in Charlotte and I live here in Charlotte. There was no other rhyme or reason behind it other than that. But she lives here in Charlotte. I love her tattoos. She seems cool. And that was my only.
Is she doing viewing parties there in Charlotte? Like, is she like been doing them like every week or?
So there's this one brewery that's in Charlotte that's having viewing parties every week. It's Free Range Brewing.
Yeah.
And she's not there every week because I think like last week she was down in Atlanta where they did, Ron Clark's thing. And she may or may not be somewhere else other than there on May 1st. Just weird how, those dates line up. I think Johnny's having a viewing party in Charlotte that day. But anyway, so this brewery's having, viewing parties every week. Like they're watching it live, turning on the sound. And I believe she's there most weeks. She's just not there every week.
Yeah. Well, that's cool that they're doing that every week as a destination for people to go. Because Charlotte seemed like a pretty good Survivor scene there as far as like, I know Cincinnati, which by the way, Johnny will be in Cincinnati next week which is my hometown for the Survivor viewing party. And Cincinnati is always a really big market for Survivor. There's been many people from Cincinnati on the show. So if you have a chance, I'm trying to go right now to my social media so I can get this right. So Johnny, King George, myself, Marcus Lehman from Survivor Gabon, Matthew Sash Lenahan from Survivor Nicaragua, Wayne Memmott. We are going to be at Northern Row Brewery. And you can look for tickets now at survivortix.com, survivortix.com. VIP, $75. Gets you in early. You can ask all the questions you want. and we will. All the survivors that are there are always super cool, talking to the fans. And general admission at 7:30, and then we watch the show 8 to 9:30. So I don't know what's going to happen next week for the podcast because
it'll be me and Alex.
Okay, so Dan and Alex.
It'll be me and Alex. Will going right after the episode, and then I'm not sure if y'all are going to do something later in the week, but Alex and I will be here for the normal right after the episode breakdown.
Okay, cool. So tonight's episode, last week was a big step in the right direction for me personally as a viewer. The Mergatory episode, I thought it was the most exciting episode. I'm so tired of the 3-tribe format. I was so tired of Banu. So I'm really glad to see a lot of these players emerge into good Survivor players, because I think Kenzie seems like a good Survivor player. Tiff, I really like Q. I know like some people are like, he's kind of bland. I personally like the way Q is and playing the game, to be honest with you. Are you a Q fan?
I like Q. I think after what we've seen tonight, this is episode 7. Yep. My prediction is Q will not be a topic that we're going to be discussing by episode 10. I think he's gone in the next 2 weeks, but I've enjoyed him being there. And sure, I'm sure some of it is just we've seen more of him because we had the Yanu just getting decimated at the beginning of the game. But you can see why he got on the show. He has a different personality than most people that have been on the show in the new era, just because he isn't that over-the-top super fan. So I think having someone like Q on the show, it is a good thing. And plus, he's starting to get that whole martial law, everything runs through Q, and that always makes some interesting episodes and usually a good blindside. So I'm all for it.
Me too. I like that we are seeing someone who is not your total Survivor online, like reality game, kind of knows everything, the ins and outs of the game, super fan. There was a time, I will say, that I was annoyed when they were having so many recruited players on Survivor and not like fans that applied. Like, I'm a fan that applied for the show. I was not recruited. Johnny was recruited. So like we kind of bitched back in the day about, man, there needs to be more fans on the show. But then when we started getting like nothing but the same kind of person, nothing but like super duper fans, then I was like, oh God, why can't we get some recruited players? Why do you think that is, that they went from such a swing? Because just a peek behind the curtain, as Johnny would say. I played Survivor Caramoan fans versus favorites. I was on the fans tribe. More than half my tribe was not fans of the show. They had never watched it. It just goes to show you that it's bullshit a lot of times what they try to kind of put out there. Fans versus favorites was not fans versus favorites.
But at least that was a theme. It's something that, it sticks out that you can say, I was on a fans versus favorite season. There's only been 2, 16 and 26. And so it makes it more identifiable. Where now that everything's just number, that sure, the themes can be bullshit and no one has to fit perfectly into it, but it makes the season more memorable. As for why they've kind of switched, I assume a lot of that is, the change in casting director with Lynn Spillman no longer being there. I assume that's part of it, but also, I don't know. I think maybe there needs to be a third casting director that comes in and just says, hey, we're going to find that middle ground where we're going to find, Lynn Spillman was finding a lot of the good looking, Mactor type people coming in. Well, don't give us a full season of that, but don't give us a full season of super fans. Give us, that mix, because you'll see that, there's times that super fans are awful at this game. There's times that recruits are, terrible at this game. But I think if you're doing it way more based off of personality and who a person is rather than, a resume or what's on, their bio that you give, that's where you're going to find it. Like you see someone like Johnny who's never watched it, but he clearly had an eye for the game. And I think that's just what they need to look for, is So sure, we want super fans on the show because it's always nice to have someone that you're watching. You're like, oh, that's me. I can identify with them. But make sure that that's not their whole personality and they have an eye for the game, an eye for TV that can make a more interesting show.
Now, I know some people in the chat right now have mentioned this, and I noticed it tonight as well. And that is the crying that happens a lot on these new era seasons. Like, I understand, like, if you get voted out, you're obviously distraught and bummed and maybe shed some tears. But it's like we're in this era of everything being a sob story. And it's just like that does kind of get old to me when everything is like a moment.
It does. So, question for you, Matt, because you played the game and, I don't want to say that I know you well, but, doing this, I have a little bit more insight on you based on, everyone who's listening. And I know you can be, an emotional guy.
Yeah.
Not overly emotional, but you show your emotions.
Yeah.
Is there anyone on your season you're playing, you're back in the game, you had to vote anyone out that's in Caramoan with you? Is there anyone that you're crying having to vote them out for?
Oh, like if I had to vote somebody out and then I feel bad because I'm voting them out, Michael Snow.
But that's also because Michael Snow, because you played with him the entire time. If you had to vote out Michael Snow at that first tribal council that you guys went with, like day 6, you're not crying.
No. Like I feel like, and I don't even know if I would cry. Like, let's say I played, if I'm out on Caramoan again and I made it super deep into the game and towards the end of the game I had to vote out Michael Snow, it would be very difficult. You would probably see me in a confessional talking about the potential of voting out somebody I love and the battle that you would have for that, because you do make these bonds. But yeah, no, I was not, any vote that I cast against anybody was not, I was like, dude, like, yeah, I'm a sensitive guy or whatever, but dude, I'm there to play the game for $1 million and I'll do whatever the hell I had to do. Period.
Well, that was part of it with, like, especially that first tribal tonight of, oh, it's so difficult. It's so hard. It's like, oh, sure, for Yanu, outside of, unless you're Kenzie, Tiff, or Q, you just met these people 2 days ago. I mean, we're seeing more tears for voting someone out that they met 2 days ago than we did when Sierra Easton voted out her mom. Like,
I know,
it's ridiculous.
Dude. It is ridiculous. I mean, come on. It's like if I'm back on Caramoan and we do the tribe swap and I have to vote out Philip Shepard or Corinne or whoever. I thought Corinne was cool. I like Don. I would have been not cared. Just vote him out.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of softies on this season. So the episode starts out. Mariah is gone. I'm sure she is bummed because she's that close to kind of just like making it toward the next phase of the game. It's a tough one, but Mariah's gone. It's night 13. Venus is bummed that she got her name written down, and she thinks it was Soda that wrote her name down, but it obviously was not.
I just love the confrontation of just wanting to talk about it, needing to talk about it. And then finally, when Charlie was like, nope, that was me. She's like, whatever, we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah. I know. So this throughout this episode, just kind of the back and forth between Venus and Soda, I find entertaining. So we see Tevin, who is like, look, they're digging their own grave right now. Because it's just they're painting big targets on themselves. At this point, at the beginning of this episode, I'm thinking, oh, dude, like Venus has no chance of, if she goes to tribal later this episode for some reason, she's getting voted out. So the fact that Venus did not was pretty shocking to me. So Charlie here admits to Venus that he wrote her name down. It's like, why? Why in the world would you come to terms to admit that. It's like too much information. Even tonight when Q gets like, if Jeff doesn't ask your ass a question, do not raise your hand to divulge information at tribal council. Johnny Fairplay purposely tried to dodge questions at tribal council and only give his confessionals of what his gameplay was. So why are people just admitting stuff?
It makes no sense because you think at this point it all came to a head where going into last tribal it was, are we going to get rid of Asiga or are we going to get rid of Anami? And so Mariah goes home, Asiga's down. And the person that Venus thinks wrote her name down is someone on her tribe. So if you're on the opposing side of that, like you're Charlie, why would you admit that? Just let that fester because you know that's going to keep Venus can't help herself. She's going to keep picking at the scab despite the fact that Soda didn't do anything. And eventually it's going to blow up. So I don't understand why you'd ever admit that.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like she was questioning and grilling everyone, being like, who wrote my name down, who did it? She had made up her mind who she thought already did it.
Do you think it's because Charlie's young? You know what I mean? Is that an age thing? Immaturity?
I
just thought he was kind of smarter than that to like actually just admit that he wrote her name down.
I don't know if it was immaturity. I think it's more because he's younger and he's just more empathetic. Yeah. And just maybe he didn't want to see that back and forth of just, Soda being grilled the entire night. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't really have a reason for, this is why he did it. It could have been for a few different reasons. I think it was stupid regardless, but
yeah, it was totally stupid. And then Q pulls him aside and basically calls him out saying, dude, we had her thinking that Soda was, the one that wrote her name down. And now you're admitting it. Like, God, like you need to like stop like being so honest here. Right. But this is also kind of could backfire on Q for trying to tell people what to do.
This is what I enjoyed about this episode is because I felt like the editors were throwing in a lot of, those little Easter eggs throughout of, this is why this person's going to get voted out or not going to win the game. And it's not to say that there aren't any good players, because there are good players that are here on the season. And, a winner doesn't necessarily have to be a good player. Sometimes it's just circumstance. Things fall their way and they win. Yeah. But it's like this entire episode, we just saw little tidbits all around of being like, oh, didn't love that person did that. And this is where it was from Q is, okay, go and talk to Charlie. Don't lecture him. That's not a good idea either.
No, it's not. And that's the thing. It's like, I like the fact that Q is playing the game to the best of his abilities, but he does seem like this, like, coach kind of, not Benjamin Coach Wade, but like that, football coach kind of, I'm coming down on you. Like, why'd you do that? No one likes to kind of be on the end of that conversation. And especially someone like Charlie, who's younger, that would annoy the shit out of me. Q coming and trying to kind of tell me what to do and make me feel bad kind of. But I don't know. I think a lot of little things like that were like negative check marks against Q in tonight's episode, proving that, like you said earlier, he probably won't make it past episode 10. And by the way, we'll get there, but do you believe that he jumped off that immunity challenge on purpose to not look threatening?
I think it's possible. If he did do it, I think his reasoning was dumb of like, oh, I want to do it to test my alliance. That's where he lost me with it. Because if he's a bigger guy and he wants to kind of throw some challenges, that way he doesn't look as being that challenge beast like Hunter's kind of getting the reputation for. Mm-hmm. I completely get that. That makes sense. We've seen that strategy used, countless times in the past. Tommy Sheehan in 39, Tyson in 27, playing up his injury. So that's nothing new. But to do it because like, oh, I want to test my alliance, that's a terrible reason to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Then we go to this scene where everyone is sleeping and Ben wakes up having a panic attack. And this is where Kenzie kind of comforts him. He needs a hand to hold, whatnot. And then at the end of the episode, we see kind of like a little message on the screen if you need, it's like a 1-800 number help. So I'm assuming that was for like because of the panic attack situation.
That would be my guess. Yeah.
So like, my thing is like you have to pass a bunch of crazy psych tests to get on Survivor. They do a really crazy evaluation to make sure you're not a serial killer when you go out there. So I'm just wondering, like, we've seen people like Brandon, the kid that couldn't climb a ladder last season, have some kind of like mental breakdown type scenarios. We've seen people quit the game for different reasons. And now we see panic attacks. We didn't really see this kind of thing earlier on pre-season 40 of people like having like really gnarly issues because Survivor is a crazy game, dude. It's like the gnarliest thing I've ever done. And I'm just wondering how they let people through that have these kind of issues going on because it can't be good to be out there in the middle of the jungle away from everyone you know, your family and friends, and have something like this occur. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can't speak to what a panic attack's like because I personally never had one. I have friends and family who've had them, and I know for them, like while it's going on, it's crippling for them, and there's not much they can do. And I'm sure there's been other panic attacks that have happened on Survivor that we just haven't seen. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but for me, my thought of why they showed it was just starting to show little types of bonds between Kenzie and Ben because we saw it twice in this episode of them kind of talking. And that's how I took it, as kind of laying, the groundwork of, oh, this could be a duo that's going to start working together at some point in the game. Could be completely off, and it could be just, Survivor. We're seeing that a lot more. But I think Kenzie being there for it shows a lot. Like, I don't think she was doing it because, oh, this is good for my game. Because she even voices, oh, this could be bad for my game because I'm helping someone out. But I think it shows why she's going to do very well in this game, because she's that empathetic person that's going to be there. What's going to just bond so many people because they're going to feel comfortable talking to her. And so that's how I took it. Like I said, could be looking at it completely wrong. But
no, that's really a good kind of take on it. And to be honest with you, like Kenzie, I think is a great all-around player. Like you said, she has that social game, that empathetic side of her. She also, I feel that she could do well in like individual immunity challenges, as we've seen a lot of these endurance challenges where women can do really well. And I think she's got a great strategic game. So to be honest with you, I find her like likable. I think that, her relationship with Tiffany, I like that alliance, and I think they're going to go far into the game together. So her being your winner pick, I think is definitely a better winner pick than I have with Venus. But
like I said, it was a complete guess. I picked her. She was from Charlotte, and I'd actually be really interested to see. And it's not like, oh, I'm hoping Q goes, but I said he's going to be gone in the next few. But I'm curious to see if that does happen, how good she really is at this game, because once she's kind of not tied to just that Yanu 3, that starting tribe, does she have that ability, like we think, to really kind of spread her wings and blossom in this game? Or is it more tied to they have this tight 3 underdog that no one's looking at right now? I think she can do really well, but who knows?
Dude, I think Kenzie, if she breaks off, like let's say her and Tiff vote out Q, and then Kenzie goes with some other people in the group, Kenzie and Tevin or whoever. I think she can adapt to any situation that she's in personally. So day 14, the boats kind of come on in, and they are arriving for an immunity challenge / reward challenge. So what they're doing here is they're going to break them up into 2 groups of 6, and there's going to be 2 immunities, 1, and 2 tribal councils, and the last person standing that wins immunity wins the reward for their group. So you have the orange group and you have the purple group. And we've seen this challenge, before. And the difference between the challenge we saw tonight and the challenge we saw before with the tides and the weather, it was night and day. To be honest with you, it literally looked like a freaking swimming pool. That's how still it was tonight for when we watched this challenge. So yeah, it was kind of like, everyone's gonna last for a while when they're on still water. You know what I mean? Do you think you would do well at something like this? When you're watching these challenges, do you say, God, if I was out there, dude, I would fucking kill it?
I don't think I'd win. I'm probably the opposite. Like, I think I do really well in water challenges. Like, I've always wanted to do the gasping for air just because I'm super comfortable in water.
Yeah.
This one I don't want to say I have great balance. I have decent balance that I think I'd do well. I wouldn't win this one. There's no shot. I don't think I'd be the first one out, but there's no way I'd win this challenge.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed it. And the food is a big thing as a reward because, we really don't get to see the true suffering that people go through on Survivor anymore. It's more just so quick gameplay. But when you really think about it, they're not getting much food at all. So this reward of actually having some food, whoever wins that is a big advantage in my opinion.
Which we see because it's the first time we've seen Liz say any words in like 4 weeks.
Oh, dude. Yes. So we have purple versus orange. When they first start the challenge, Q has this bright idea of playing this like cities game amongst everyone where you name like in the alphabet, name a city with A, then B, then C. No one knew what the hell the game was about. However, I love the fact that Liz mentioned C for Cincinnati. So shout out to my hometown. So if you're just tuning in, next week, Cincinnati, if you want to talk to me, Johnny, King George, Marcus Lehman, Stash, Wayne Mehmet, go to survivortix.com, survivortix.com, and find out all the information. Northern Row Brewery here in Cincinnati. It will be a blast. And my house will be infiltrated by, Johnny Fairplay and King George. I'm going to be spending the weekend. So this Friday night, I'm having a birthday party at the Southgate House Revival. It's this badass concert venue. Free show. My son's DJing, and then my band Moonbow's playing. And so I imagine after my extravaganza on Friday, I'll be prepping my house. I'm going to try to get my swimming pool ready, Dan, so that, King George and Johnny are like, dude, is your pool going to be open? I'm like, we'll see. So if I can get my pool up and running and turn that heater on, I'm sure that Johnny Fairplay and King George are going to be busting out their Speedos. Which Johnny's like, we're going to bring you a Speedo. We're getting a picture of if your pool's open in the Speedo. Now, I don't know about all that nonsense.
Well, that's what I was going to say is, do you just want nothing but banana hammocks running around your house?
Dude,
that's what you're going to get if the pool's open.
Maybe I should. Let me text my wife right now. We are not going to open the pool at all costs. I do not want banana hammocks in my face. I'm not a fan of the Speedo. But this challenge, I thought the challenge was cool. Q jumps off. We end up having Kenzie winning. But at the end of the day, Maria wins. She's the last woman standing for this challenge, wins the reward for her group of people. And one thing I want to mention too, real quick about this challenge. Tim mentions to Jeff, he said, what's he say? Tim asked Jeff, what's up? And then Q says, what does Q exactly say about asking the time?
I think he says that's how we ask what time it is.
Yes. Okay. So, and then Jeff says, I learned something new every day. This slang term. So he asked it again. Tim asked it again. And so I thought it was funny. I thought that overall, this whole challenge with Q's game and Tim asking the what's up deal, it seemed just kind of like a fun vibe, which, challenges are serious and everything doesn't have to be kumbaya, obviously, but overall, like, I liked how this challenge played out, to be honest with you.
No, I thought it was something that was new. What I didn't necessarily love at the end, where Tim just started shouting out everybody, and it felt a little, Gabler-y, where he had that one challenge where he's like, "This minute's for Arkansas," and kept going all the time. But it's something to pass the time. I get that.
Well, okay. Well, let me ask you this with that. I know we're making fun of the whole Gabler and even Tim doing this shout outs. If Johnny Fairplay is back on Survivor and he's doing a challenge and he's like balancing on something and he's like, I want to take it back to the reality after show crew. Shout out to Dan Montchal. Shout out to Alex Trias. Shout out to Matt Bischoff. Would you be like pretty damn stoked?
Oh yeah, I'd be losing my mind. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm 100% hypocritical on my part. Willing to admit that.
Dude, that would rule. I hope it happens.
Which, like, I'm sure, like, that's awesome that Tim did get that in the show. As much as I was just kind of shitting on it, is thinking he gets to go back and he gets to watch this with his family where they kept that in. Like, that's awesome. That's a great moment for them.
It is. So Maria wins it for purple, and then it's day 14. It's the feast time. Everyone's kind of eating food, drinking this iced coffee. Venus kind of mentions that, like, throws out Charlie's name to be on the chopping block. But Tevin, on the other hand, has other plans. So I understand that you're throwing kind of Charlie's name out there, but I don't think at this point, even if that was kind of the deal, like, Charlie would not be who I would want to target at this point.
No, I don't think so. And if you look at it from Tevin, so I think Tevin's firmly in this mindset of, he wants to explore this, +6 alliance that was the 3 guys that went on the journey, plus they all pulled one in. So there were 6 of them.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that he's thinking, hey, like, I want to work with Maria long-term in this game.
Yes.
If she doesn't want to get rid of Charlie, who's there because she feels really close with him, well, he has the option of Venus, who he's been annoyed with for quite some time, and Soda, where you saw back in episode 3, 4, whatever it was, starting to throw her name out as well. Mm-hmm. So I think it was really easy for him to pivot there, being like, hey, I want to keep Maria happy because I want to show her that I want to keep working with her. And if she feels good with Charlie, that's great. I have 2 people from my existing tribe that I necessarily didn't want to work with anyway, and I'm okay with sending them home.
Yeah, right. No, I think that's killer. One thing I kind of wish we would have seen at these, like, feasts are, we've seen it before where at, like, some sort of, like, reward kind of deal, that there's like an idol or a clue to an idol. No one
idol in a sandwich.
What's that?
Let's put an idol in a sandwich or in the napkin rolls or anything that we've seen.
Yeah, like as much as I'm kind of like, at one point I'm like, there's too many advantages, there's too many idols. It would be kind of cool, like, if I'm at a reward, dude, and there's like loaves of bread and different shit, I'm looking up, I'm going to be like completely on alert thinking that there might be an idol. But there just doesn't even seem like anyone's even caring or thinking about that at these rewards. Yeah,
and maybe they were looking and we didn't see it. It's possible, but you're right. And that's been the biggest, criticism. Well, there's been a lot of big criticism since it came back in 41, but one has been all these, there's so many advantages. Well, it's all right. Yeah. We stopped going on to Shipwheel Island every week. So sure, there's a few that are hanging out there, but that's been pretty basic for Survivor for quite some time, is that there's an idol that's placed on all the starting camps. And then you have one when you go to the merged beach. So that would be my mindset is, hey, I don't think anyone's found the merged idol.
Yeah.
That's the perfect place to hide it, is you hide it somewhere in a reward.
Yep. And we haven't even seen people kind of, or they did and it was on no one's radar, and they just, if no one found it or no one's even talking about it, the producers aren't even going to show it. So it'd be interesting to see on a secret scene if there are any kind of situations like that. So Q and Tim kind of like talking about how Hunter is a big threat, like a big physical threat. And then Q mentions, wanting Tim out. And Tim, he's someone that when I did the, pre-game predictions cast assessment for these people, Tim was a big fan of Shamar, or so he said, or maybe he was joking. So, the thought of Tim at this point going home, I'm kind of like battle, because there's a part of me that really liked him. I began to like him in this game and stuff like that, and I feel like he was another player that truly is wanting to play this game to win the game, and I admire that. So now that he's gone, it is what it is. But I was kind of turning the corner on liking that guy.
I think it was just a misread from Tim, and we've seen that he's had a few. He's had some good reads throughout this game, but then he's also had some ones that haven't been great. And I think if you're having that conversation with Q, where you asked them the first time, oh, well, what about Hunter? And Q pushes back saying, well, we have that alliance of the 6. I don't think you can keep pushing that, because if you keep pushing that, that's going to put his name out there rather than, like, had he not done that, sure, he may have lost his ally in Ben, or he could have gone back to maybe Tiff and Kenzie and Ben and tried to come up with a different strategy. But I think as soon as he kept pushing Q on trying to go against that 6 and Q wasn't budging, that's really what sunk his own ship.
Yep, I agree. So Charlie is worried. There's 4 Nami, 2 Siga. Soda doesn't want Charlie gone. And Soda and Charlie talking about Venus going. And then Soda and Tevin talk about Venus going. But Tevin, however, kind of has separated himself from Soda at this point. And Tevin talks to Liz, the person that we haven't really seen much about at all, about blindsiding Soda.
She gives an ironically funny quote here or whatever, where she's just like, Soda's been laying low this whole game. That's why I want her out. I'm like, Liz, nobody's been laying lower than you. Like, you've been playing dead for 6 days now. Like,
yeah, I know, dude.
It's a weird comment.
It is. So Tevin talks to Maria about voting Soda, and then Venus and Maria start talking. And I think right now Venus kind of says she's wanting Tevin gone or something like that, right?
Yeah, she starts out by kind of soft pitching Soda and then saying, like, or we can make a bigger move and take out Tevin.
Mm-hmm. And then we see a conversation with Venus talking to Charlie. And Venus is talking to all kinds of people right here. So this is where, she ends up talking with Maria, and then Maria ends up calling out Venus for being kind of too abrasive. It's just like, hey, I don't like when you're a 20-year-old and you're kind of coming at me like in this certain kind of way, and they just, that shit just didn't mesh. I think Venus is coming off a little bit too strong.
She's coming off too strong, and I think you also have to just pick up that you're living with them is, how do people act and operate? So I look at as I grew up in the Northeast, and so the Northeast. I wasn't in New York or Boston, Philly, anything like that. That's where I came from, and I've worked, since college. I've worked in sales my entire career, and so when I was talking to people in the Northeast, it could be more confrontational, and it was about boom, like, let's get things done right away. And then I moved down into the Southeast where things are a lot more slower pace. You have to ease into conversation and things like that. And I think that could just be a simple misunderstanding. Is I don't necessarily think Venus did it because she's young. That could definitely play a part in why it's done. But I think it's also just realizing is how do people talk and interact? And she just had to pick up on something that coming right at Maria, while she wasn't trying to be aggressive, that's just how she was going to take it.
Yeah, so I hear you. So Maria doesn't trust Venus at all. And then we have Charlie talking with Maria about, look, we can take control of this game. So there's Soda and Venus, both threats in their own way. And then we see Q talking with Kenzie and Tiffany about voting Tim. But Tiffany thinks kind of Ben is a better option than Tim. And if you're out there when you're looking at Tim and Ben, who is the bigger threat to you?
It's Ben.
Yeah.
I would think also there should have been a conversation, and maybe there was, between Q and Tiff right there, just being like, hey, we're starting to notice that Kenzie is forming this bond with Ben.
Mm-hmm.
And while right now we can easily have Kenzie on board to let's just get rid of Ben, it's better for our game.
Mm-hmm.
2 tribals down the line, that may be a tougher conversation. So I think they also should have looked at that, being like, hey, let's just kind of nip that just way Kenzie doesn't have any other options. Her only options are to stay with us and we can get her on board.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you also just seeing it seems like Ben's a much more sociable person. He's getting along with people better than Tim are, where it isn't that Tim isn't getting along, but you can see that he's rubbing some people the wrong way. So I think Ben would have been the right move to go.
Yeah. I mean, Ben is a likable guy. Ben is, we've seen a fun side of Ben to where he's someone that if you make it to the end of the game and you have someone like Venus who you might be like, man, she was kind of abrasive. Ben, he's a nice guy. He gets along with everybody. He talks about Van Halen and Megadeth. We want him to win. It's the new Billy Garcia when it comes to the heavy metal stuff. But yeah, I think Ben is a bigger kind of threat from a likability standpoint. So Tiffany thinks Ben is a better option, and I think Tiffany's very smart. Tiffany's a freaking badass too, by the way. Hunter, we know that he has an idol that he's not scared to play in the case that he thinks he needs to play an idol, because Hunter, he's the kind of guy that could easily find another idol if he played an idol and then goes back and play. He seems like your typical guy that could find it after it's been hidden again.
It's also, from what we've seen, is Hunter does the smart thing, which so many people struggle with. So many people, you're put in Hunter's shoes, you're looked as you're the odd one out. You're the one that doesn't have anyone from your original tribe. You have that challenge reputation that he's starting to build. And it would have been really easy that I think most people would have fallen into the trap, is run in circles around everyone, trying to be like, what's going on, pitch their case over and over. Mm-hmm. But I think he gets some reassurance from Q, and when he has that conversation that Kenzie and Tiff are around, that he does the smart thing and he kind of just shuts up and he's like, this is the plan. This is what I'm going to stick with. If I get some feeling that something off, I have that idol in my back pocket. But he just shuts up, which is so hard for so many people to do, because I feel like there are plenty of other survivors that have been in Hunter's shoes, and it wouldn't have been Hunter, but they would have talked to everyone, run around, and it would have kind of raised everyone's antennas, being like, what's going on with Hunter? Let's just get rid of him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Hunter's smart, because we saw, like I said, Charlie admitted earlier that he was the one that wrote down Venus's name. I know it's like you're dying to tell people things, but if you can keep it like super, tight-lipped, like Hunter's doing, hey, that's the way to go. So Q now, we see a scene where he's kind of tripping out a little bit, dude. He's talking to Tiffany and Kenzie, and 1 minute he's saying one thing, and then the next minute he's saying like another thing. And I think this is where this is foreshadowing potentially Q's downfall of where things start to maybe unravel.
Absolutely. You can see that if he's going to constantly shift around, it's going to rub his allies the wrong way. And I just love the conversation that once he left, it was between Kenzie and Tiff, where they're like, watch, he's going to come back in a few minutes. Be like, you know what? Just vote me out. Yeah. And I was like, we saw it once. And from that comment, you can tell, oh, he's done that several times out there, that they're picking up and making a joke about that.
Yep. Tribal Council 1. Hunter, he's like, look, I'm like a free agent here. Like, I don't have loyalty to anyone really. If you want to use me to be a number, I am here. And he obviously doesn't want to go home, because going home right here is like the worst possible scenario, because whoever gets voted out at the first tribal council does not make the jury. And that's such a bitter pill to swallow. So, Tim, we see him kind of saying that Hunter is a big threat, and Hunter is someone that can win a lot of challenges. He's more of an old school type player. I think he's a good player, but I think he's just kind of got that more old school survivor player mentality.
He does. No, he absolutely does. You could have thrown him back in the first 10 seasons, and I think he would have fit in very well there. But I did. So going back to when they were talking before, I believe it's when Q was talking with Tim back at camp. It does show that Q, he's picking up he may not be the super fan, but he's aware of the game, and he's at least smart that so many people talk about the challenge threats. And Q's just like, he's not winning 10 in a row. Like, we don't have to worry about that. He isn't going to be safe this entire time.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Especially in this new era, which I hate that word, but yeah, no one's winning. No one's going to be winning like time and time again. Tim says that he hasn't really had to make any tough decisions yet. And then we see Ben talking about his panic attack and how Kenzie helped him. And we're seeing this kind of sob story with Ben. He kind of gets emotional. And at this point, I'm like, oh, God, I've had it enough. I've had it up to here with the emotional crying. But at this point, I'm thinking to myself, oh, dude, this is Ben's boot episode, because they're giving him his moment of this is a game. And I overcame my anxiety attack, and Kenzie helped me. And if I've learned one thing out there on Survivor is that, people can be empathetic, and the friends that I've made out here is worth more than $1 million. I'm like, oh God, here we go. He's going to be
a million hearts. Here we go.
Oh God, dude, I'd rather see 1 million sharts than 1 million hearts. But so Ben talks about his panic attack. And I was like, I wrote in my notes, seems like a Ben boot. But then Kenzie starts getting emotional about just talking about that human connection that you have with people. Like her confiding in Ben when Ben had the panic attack was not related to the game. It was just, I felt like it was the right thing to do. I felt like I need to be here for Ben and during something that's like kind of traumatic for people that have these panic attacks. I've never had a panic attack. My mother has had panic attacks and things like that in the past. Thank God that I've never had to deal with that stuff, because it honestly doesn't look fun. And I feel really bad for people that are have that, and especially have one when you're like on Survivor playing a game for $1 million and have a panic attack. That's like the worst possible place to have something like this occur. So, and this is where I don't understand, where Q raises his hand and says, Jeff, I know you didn't ask me anything, but look, I want to give Kenzie a hand about being so badass and, winning this challenge and whatnot. So I think this is kind of like, yes, another foreshadowing dumb move to where Q is kind of putting his own foot in his mouth. Don't raise your hand, dude.
No, don't talk out of turn. I don't say that I would have understood it, but at least I think I would have understood it more had this been a standard tribal council where there was 12 of them there. If he was starting to feel some heat on him that, hey, they're probably going to take out a Yanu soon, so I'm going to try to prop Kenzie up in a way that kind of lowers his threat. Mm-hmm. But it made no sense here. Like, sure, like I'm sure you know what he did is he told Kenzie in private, hey, awesome job, girl. Like, that's all that needed to be said.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And Kyle Dorr says, Q giving main character energy as noted from a previous episode sums him up. Yeah, and like I said, as my wife and I are watching, like, I was like, I like Q. I don't know. He just kind of like you said, he's not just your typical game bot, and he's got this intensity about him. So I find him entertaining to be on this season. Like I'm glad Q is here, and I'm all about watching him in the good times and the bad play the game. And I know that we've seen these little snippets of like, oh shit, his game's probably going to blow up pretty quick.
But that makes the show more interesting. Like, I like seeing people with flaws play the game, like flaws in their game, because we get these moments that are more entertaining. It leads to someone screwed up and it causes chaos. Like, nobody's clamoring for the perfect winner, because a perfect winner, you're getting a one world scenario where Kim Spradling dominated the whole game. That wasn't fun. Like, no, I want to see people with flaws and how they overcome them. And so maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe Q kind of digs himself into a hole, but he's able to overcome it. Or maybe he just completely flames out, which in that case, I'm sure will be entertaining as well. So
and
I'm
Q,
all for the flaws.
Q, if you're listening, I love you. I can't wait to meet you, hopefully at a charity event one day. So it's time to vote. And Tim, you end up getting voted out, brother. And I could tell it was not fun for you, because as he's walking down the path of shame after he got voted out, he kind of stops and he's just like devastated. It's such a weird thing when you get voted out. It's such a surreal thing that it really doesn't even hit you fully until you're like at Ponderosa, or like even the next day, kind of like, oh God, like this has to sink in that I'm voted out of Survivor. So Tim, it was fun watching you play. And I hope you had a great experience playing. And I'm sorry that you were the person that, did not make the jury, because that's a tough one. We go right from here, Dan, to Tribal Council number 2. Liz makes a comment saying, I'm happy that I have friends in like both groups of people. And she's like kind of divulging that she has alliances and these relationships with like multiple people. And I'm like, again, shut up. Like, we haven't seen you talk the whole game. And when you're talking right now at Tribal, you're blowing up your game like you're friends with everybody.
She has 2 modes. She has I'm dead, which I don't blame her for it, because we do know that she has all these allergies. So if she hasn't really been able to eat in all this time, of course you're going to be dead out there.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's the best case scenario, because when she isn't dead, her second option is unlikable.
Yeah.
Because we saw it here tonight. We saw it, 5 episodes ago when she was talking about how much money she makes in businesses. It's just like, go back to playing dead again. Like, it's a more enjoyable version.
Right. I mean, the greatest thing she said tonight was just mentioning my hometown of Cincinnati, which was cool. But yeah, she's kicking herself in her own butt here. She just needs to like be quiet.
If I'm anyone on this game and you're paying attention, if you can find the path of being like final 3, it's going to be me, it's going to be Liz, and it's going to be Venus. You have yourself a guaranteed victory.
Yes, dude, I hear you. So Venus here, she claims she's like worried. Liz says, I want to stay Nami strong. and I didn't even bring my bag because I don't even think I'm going home. That takes a lot of courage not to bring your bag. Not the best idea. Charlie is worried because his name has been kind of brought up, and he's just kind of concerned. But overall, we're seeing like a Soda versus Venus kind of thing play out as what the episode presented to us. Soda ends up getting voted out. She actually goes to Venus and was like, "Was it you? Like, was this your doings and all that stuff?" And Venus is kind of claiming.
Oh, she's so happy to take credit for that. And
she
just the thought of Kevin being like, "No," was great. But
yeah,
no, I mean, that was the best moment of this tribal, because this entire tribal, everyone was playing, gamesmanship of being like, yep. We all know that we're not sticking to tribal lines. No one actually thinks that this is going to happen, but no one's really saying anything to tip off what they're about to do. Yes. So there was nothing that was really said at this tribal council that you could take, more than a grain of salt from.
Yes. And when Soda goes home, she's obviously devastated. She's a big fan. She's kind of tearing up as Jeff is snuffing her torch. Soda, I loved you on the show. From what I've heard from Fair Play, you're a great person. Screw all of the haters that have ever made a negative comment about, your game or anything else about you, which I have not. And we've talked about this in the podcast before. I have not seen any of that hate. I try to stay away from all that stuff. I try to go into podcasting about these episodes with just my pure reaction and emotion of in the moment. I don't pay attention to a lot of stuff, the other things. So, Soda, an inspiration to people that are watching to get off the couch. Like when Sari was like, "Look, I just want people to get off the couch and apply for this show." You are a true inspiration. And I loved you on my TV screen. And I think you have a great future ahead of you in life. And you were just super fun to watch. And that challenge, I think, I don't know, it was a week or two ago when they made that human ladder. Yeah, last week. That was unbelievable, dude. I looked back again at some photos of that thing, that challenge, and like, wow, how amazing. So Soda, you were a badass. And congratulations, you made the jury. So that's good. And Tim, I'm sorry you did not. And we'll see how this plays out. Like I said, last week's episode I enjoyed. I enjoyed tonight's episode, Dan. I think that if these players can just play the game and cut out some of the sob story, crying kind of shit, and just let these players play, I think we could have like a decent last half of the season.
Oh, I completely agree. I think there's a lot left that can be done that can elevate the season past the first few episodes, which weren't great. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, Matt, you took us in this direction where it's so positive and uplifting. I'm not sure if you saw the comments from last week claiming that we're now a woke podcast, which made me laugh.
They did?
Yeah, they're like, "Is this a woke podcast now?" I was like, "Hey, we're way more critical of people's games than any other Survivor podcasts out there. B, at the end of the day, this is still something that we all enjoy Survivor and enjoy talking about. Like, why would we come on and just hate watch something? It makes no sense." But I saw that comment from last week, and it honestly made me laugh.
Oh, that's funny. So here's the deal. Like, there have been times post season 40 where I was fucking dreading doing the podcast because I fucking hated a lot of shit. If you go back and listen to our 45 coverage when people are quitting.
Episode 1.
Yeah, I am fired up. Any of these dumbasses that quit, give up, I miss so-and-so at home. It's like, don't apply for this show. If you think this shit is like not keeping it real, you got another thing coming. Do I think Australian Survivor is superior to American Survivor? Yes. am I optimistic on season 46? As I played Survivor and I'm a fan of Survivor. So, and I podcast about Survivor. So, number one, the last thing that I want to do is give a fake reaction of what I think about an episode, and I'll keep it real. And then if you want to listen to our Patreon coverage that you have to pay for, so the super fans that really love this podcast really get an in-depth view of really a lot of things on that Patreon, realitypatron.com, if you want to check that out. But I don't want to do I think season 46 is like top 10 season at this point? No, not even close. But I still love Survivor. And like tonight after I got done watching it, I'm like, talking to my wife, I was like, that's a pretty good episode of Survivors. And so was last week. The first 4 or 5 episodes, I was like, this is 90 minutes of torture. Like I wish it was shorter because I gotta sit through 90 minutes of this shit and then podcast about it. But the people that listen to the podcast, dude, are fans of Survivor. Mm-hmm. Why would anyone want to hear like some cookie cutter shit or just like, I don't know. I feel like we keep it real, to be honest with you.
Oh, we absolutely do. And it's all, for a lot of it, it's all about perspective. Like, I get it all has Survivor in the title. Yeah. But US Survivor and Australian Survivor, they're not the same show. So for me, I look at them as 2 completely different shows. Yeah. Even it's how I look at it is, I'm going to use the word you hate, Matt, and I'm sorry, new era. But I look at the first 40 seasons different from where we're at now. It's a different show.
Right.
You know, you take the good from it, you enjoy it for what it is. And I think you said it last week or 2 weeks ago that for you, this is you watching, it's your 90 minutes of escape from reality.
It is.
So you're not going to love everything, but if you're going to look at everything as, oh, this is the worst or everything's so negative, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, right. No, totally. So if you guys want to come watch Survivor with us, hopefully next week will be a great episode. Come to Northern Row Brewery here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Myself, King George, Johnny Fairplay, Marcus Lehman, and Matthew Sash-Lenahan, Wayne Memmott. Come check it out. Talk with us. We'll give you all the inside scoop. Any questions that you have, go to survivortix.com. That's survivortix.com for all the information. And Dan, thank you very much for joining. As always, because Johnny, if Johnny is doing an event like he is with King George, it's like myself, Dan, and Alex. So always a great time. I love it. Thank you, Dan. And we will see you all next week for another season 46 episode of Survivor coverage here on the Reality After Show. Cheers, everyone, and good night. Boom.